Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Menopause Mindset Monday live. Hello, if you are watching, do let me know, jump on and say hi. Let me just get my little comments block up so I can see. Now, I can't see who's watching, so if you are watching, just leave a little comment for me. That would be awesome. So, how are you? Let me know how you're doing today, and let me tell you what the Menopause Mindset Group is all about. This is the place where we explore topics related to perimenopause in all of its colours and all of its variations, because believe you me, there are loads of colours and loads of variations. That's the gorgeous thing about it, and that's the gorgeous thing about being a woman. Am I sharing my screen? Let me just... No, I'm doing the right thing there. That's good. So the message around menopause has been that, there's nothing you can do about it. You're sort of lumbered with it, basically. And I am on a mission to show women all around the world that, it doesn't have to be like that. We can be in charge of our menopause. We don't have to be subject to all of the bad news around it, to all of the symptoms and all of that yucky stuff. So I'm on this mission. So I've got so many bleeps and pops coming up, but I'm getting there now, so bear with me. It's all new at the moment. And I am on that mission, even though these bleeps are coming up. So there are absolutely so many things that we can do about our menopause if we take ownership of our health and if we decide to change our attitude towards our health. So that is what this group is all about. So thank you very much for joining me. If you are watching, say hi, let me know you're watching, leave me a little comment. And, if you've got any questions as well, please let me know what they are. I love answering questions. And watch to the end, because I always save the best till last. So today's talk is called Pleasure. Why is pleasure so important at menopause? And of course, how can you get more of it? So this is for you if you don't believe that menopause and pleasure can mix, right? You like the idea of pleasure, but you just keep putting it off. Maybe you don't value it. Maybe you don't know why it's important. Maybe it's just not quite landed in you yet that pleasure is healing. Pleasure is important. Hi, Paula. My loving, faithful Paula, you're here. This is for you if you keep looking outside of yourself for pleasure. Maybe food, maybe sexual encounters, maybe work, maybe socials, maybe projects, maybe books, maybe what else? I don't know, there's a plethora of ways, isn't there? But at the end of the day, you still feel empty. Okay, so why is pleasure important? Before we talk about that, I want to let you know actually that the reason I'm talking about this today is because I have just come back from a 3-day Tantra retreat here in Brighton, but it felt like I was in the middle of nowhere with Graham, my partner, and it absolutely blew my mind. So much so that I've been processing so much over the last few days. I haven't had a great deal of sleep, so I'm a bit foggy headed today. So please bear with me. But this Tantra weekend literally blew my mind. Now, when most people think about Tantra, they think about sex, and more sex, right? But truthfully, sex is only a very teeny, tiny, teeny, weeny part of it. So the majority of Tantra is about coming back to yourself, coming back into your body, really owning your sexuality, really owning your own pleasure. So using the whole of life to kind of turn you on rather than just sex, food, Netflix, work, whatever it is, using the whole of life. And the breath is a big part of this too. You'll probably see me breathing a little bit more than normal. And that's for a reason. I've got Post-it notes all around my flat now reminding me to breathe. So my biggest takeaway from this weekend that I've just been on was that Pleasure is yours. Okay, it's yours to own. You own your pleasure. Nobody else owns your pleasure. Your partner does not own your pleasure. So, how you respond to sensory stimulation is down to how open you are and how receptive you are, right? So, there we go. All right, so why is pleasure a menopausal subject then? Because menopause is actually like a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage away from pain, burnout, discomfort, towards pleasure and towards wisdom, towards clarity and all of that lovely stuff. So we are literally going from one phase of our lives into another. And this transition, like any other transition, doesn't come without pain and struggle. Okay. And they say, I love this, they say that perimenopause is like the labor pains that we have to go through in order to give birth to our new selves after menopause. So, in this sense, menopause is all about this idea of the emerging self. And it does emerge, but it only emerges if we embrace this change, if we really take this idea that there is something, that there is life after menopause, and run with it and believe it. Because it's very, very easy to get caught up in the poor me, in the story, in what culture says the menopause has to be about. And we know that perimenopause can be stormy, it can be aggressive, it can be harrowing for some people, and that's why they call it the cleansing fires. But so much comes with that. So much learning comes with it, so much potential, so much passion, and so much power comes with it if we learn to really go with the flow, if we learn to embrace those fires and really let it cleanse us, really get the message. Only if we allow ourselves to be reborn can we experience all of the pleasures that menopause has got to offer us. So, what did I say here? We can easily hold on to the grudge of menopause and feed the aggression and the doldrums around it. But women who make a point of keeping themselves in tune with life, with life force energy, and this is what Tantra is all about, life force energy, they become a magnetic force in the world, a force for good, a force for change. And there have been studies done that show that in menopausal women, the temporal lobes actually change. And this change causes midlife women to become more interested in social issues like social justice. They become more interested in the environment. They become more interested in feminism. They become more interested in health, well-being, and getting the job done, getting things changed. So there's a real physical change in the brain if we can move through the this transition and fire up the pleasure centers, fire up the passion that is there within us for us to grasp, to hold on to, and to use as a hugely transformational power. Yeah, so passion and pleasure can literally heal us from the inside out. So your body works so much better. Hang on, sorry. There we go. Your body works so much better when you are in pleasure. All right, your hormones work better, your mood is better, your relationships are better, and pleasure affects the body by a very, very potent chemical, which I've just found out about, called nitric oxide. Okay, I found out about this recently. And I always knew about the hormones, the oxytocin, the dopamine, the endorphins, but I wasn't really sure what nitric oxide was. I thought, I've heard of that, but isn't it toxic? And what I was thinking of was nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is like a laughing gas that they use at the dentist, but nitric oxide is actually a free radical, and that is usually thought of as bad. But there are good free radicals and there are bad free radicals, much like there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Okay, so nitric oxide is released when we experience pleasure through our senses. And that's what pleasure is. It's a sensory experience. So when you experience pleasure, your blood vessels emit these little puffs of nitric oxide. They go into your blood, and because it's a gas, it gets transmitted literally instantly, because gases are very volatile. They spread really, really quickly. What this nitric oxide does is it increases your circulation and your blood flow, and it also turns on the production of these neurotransmitters, which carry messages backwards and forwards between the brain and the body. And one of those neurotransmitters is called beta endorphin, which acts like morphine. It's like a natural painkiller. So that's why, you know, pleasure is like a natural painkiller. So you get a reduction in pain. You also get a dose of this chemical called prolactin, which makes you feel bonded and supported. So this is released when mothers give birth, when you're nursing a child, when you're hanging out with friends, and when you're having an orgasm too. So this nitric oxide, nitric, I have to remember to say nitric, not nitrous. This nitric oxide is what we are looking for. I've actually seen it. You can buy it in pill form. Now, I don't know how it works as a supplement, and I'm not advising you go and get some. What I'm advising is you work on building your own pleasure habit for yourself so that you can get your own release of nitric oxide through the body, because it is really life-changing. It's anti-aging for sure. So I have recently been reading this book called The Secret Pleasures of Menopause, which is where it's all coming from. And in this book, Christiane, I thought it was Christine, sorry. Dr. Christiane Northrup talks about a doctor called Faryed Murad. And he shared the 1998 Nobel Prize in Medicine for his research, leading the discovery that nitric oxide is the body's signaling molecule. Meaning that if you produce enough of it, you stay healthy and you function really well. But if you don't, your cells begin to break down. Causing like aches, pains, chronic degenerative type diseases associated with aging, like, you know, degenerative disc disease, arthritis, osteoporosis, and stuff like that. They have a book out called The Wellness Solution. I haven't read it. I am going to get it because I want to do a deep dive into this subject for myself. I'm really, really keen to learn more. So I just wanted to share that with you. So when nitric oxide is produced, it causes the blood vessels to relax. I need to do a little bit of that right now. To relax, to open, to widen. And what this does is it sends blood to the brain and all of the organs and all of the muscles. And what's happening is the blood vessels open and the nutrients can get to your different body parts quicker. Everything is delivered quicker, right? So most people think in health that more good stuff is better. So more vitamins, more fruit and veg, more minerals. But it doesn't really mean anything if delivery is slow. You know, if your blood vessels are constricted, the delivery of those nutrients is going to be much slower. And, you know, if your gut health isn't great, you're not going to absorb those nutrients in. So this is why we need blood vessels and capillaries that are open, that are relaxed, and that are calm. You know, Wim Hof talks about this. You can wrap your blood vessels around the earth twice. I think that's what he says. You know, this is incredible. We have so many blood vessels in our body, and we really need to understand what is going on. We need to relax them. We need to open them up. They have like a muscular system within themselves. They're not muscle, but they do have an opening and closing. And this nitric oxide helps to really open those blood vessels so that we can get delivery. We can take delivery of our vitamins and minerals and oxygen, whatever, much quicker. It goes in quicker, and that is what we need. So nitric oxide is extremely powerful because of this opening effect, and some of the big killers are caused as a result of the constricting effect. Heart disease, heart attacks, and stroke particularly. And things like cancer and diabetes are associated with inflammation, and inflammation in turn restricts blood flow by lowering the nitric oxide levels too. So really, really, really important. And they've also found that positive affirmations help to release nitric oxide as well. So anything that soothes you, anything that makes you feel a sense of relief, anything that makes you feel calmer is probably, I'm no scientist, but I guess this is what this is alluding to, that it's going to make you feel better. So I just want to read you a page, it's only a little page out of this book, which I think really woke me up to the magical nature of this nitric oxide. So where are we? Nitric oxide even works its magic at the very start of life. Research done on sea urchins at Stanford University shows that when a sperm and an egg are united, I'm going to have to turn that off, aren't I? Bear with me. This is probably the most interrupted live I've ever done. Sorry, let me start again. Nitric oxide even works its magic at the very start of life. Research done on sea urchins at Stanford University shows that when a sperm and an egg are united, nitric oxide is immediately manufactured and released first in the sperm and then the egg. It's this discharge of nitric oxide that triggers the vital release of calcium that's necessary for the newly fertilized egg to start the process of dividing and becoming an embryo. Researchers believe that this process probably works much the same for humans as well. And the latest findings also indicate that providing nitric oxide to the lungs of premature babies can save their lives. And interestingly, the white light that so many people report as part of a near-death experience is also from a blast of nitric oxide, leading me, the author, to believe that the energy that gets us into our physical bodies is present as well when we exit. This thought can really help us trust the process of life. Nitric oxide quite literally is the spark of life. It's the physical equivalent of life energy, of chi, of prana. It's what breathes life into us in the first place, and then throughout our daily lives it tells our cells to live or die, thrive or decay. So there we go. It's really important. Okay, so from all of this, we know as menopausal women that we need to get more pleasure into our lives because it's going to help us with our symptoms. But we have blocks to pleasure. Let me know what your blocks to pleasure are. I know for me, I often have not prioritized pleasure. I do much more so now because I see the value in it. But, before I had my big midlife crisis last year or the year before, whenever it was, I would push. And I would not schedule in pleasure. I wouldn't really see the value of it. I would work myself into a hole. I wouldn't do my pleasure practices. And I'm going to show you a few. I did a YouTube video today and I'm going to give you a link to that. So we do have blocks. We have many blocks, and we have to realize that it's actually a bullshit story that we're telling ourselves. Maybe we feel that we don't deserve pleasure. Maybe we feel that we need to be punished rather than given pleasure. It's a cultural, societal thing as well, where pleasure is not ingrained into our lives. We're told to work. We're not told to relax. We're not told to nap. There's a brilliant account on Instagram called the Nap Ministry, which I'm following a lot, and she, whoever is at the heart of it, I think it's a she, is all about, you know, changing the world one nap at a time, and that the powers that be do not want us to take naps because because naps help us to get insights. They help us to tune in with our feelings, and it's hugely powerful when we take naps. We get these like moments of clarity, and actually napping helps us to have more energy through the rest of the day. So we need to drop our bullshit story, don't we, ladies, about why pleasure is not available to us, why it's not important to us, why we don't prioritize it, why we don't put it before other things, really. So my 3 tips for creating more pleasure in your life. Here they come. And as always, I'm saving the best till last. So tip number 1. Switch off your brain and get into your body. Oh, let's just take a breath right now, shall we? Let's just, all of us, just take a lovely breath and really intend on switching off the brain and coming back into the body, coming back into the senses. We spend so much of our time up there in our brains, don't we? We're like lollipops. That was one of the analogies at the weekend. We're like a lollipop with a big head and a small body. And what I mean by that is where attention goes, energy flows. So if usually all of our attention is in our head, which means our energy is up here. It's massive. We've got loads of energy up here in our crown, in our third eye. We're just overloaded with it all. But there's no energy in our lower chakras, our lower energy centers. So we do a fantastic job of ignoring our bodies and pushing its needs down, which is really, really sad. And often we have to wait until our bodies are absolutely screaming at us until we get the message, until we really listen and actually, you know, stop doing what we're doing. And I think we need to stop that, ladies. We need to stop waiting until things have got so bad that that's when we listen. We've got to listen beforehand. You know, if you really care about yourself, if you really care about your loved ones, you have to stop doing that. You have to put your own needs first. Now, it's not your fault that you don't put your own needs first. We're all guilty of it because, you know, technology is forcing us to be more screen orientated. We have to be on the screen a lot of the time. Culture doesn't tell us that pleasure is important. And yeah, so there's a lot influencing us to keep us in our head and out of our body. But we have to take our control back. We have to take our power back, reclaim that power, and, you know, walk the path of an autonomous being who's really in charge of her health and her decisions and her pleasure. So this idea of coming out of your head and into your body is about becoming less like a lollipop and more like a jelly baby. So if you look at a jelly baby, they're short and stubby and they've got fat bellies. Not that I'm advocating a fat belly, I'm not. But, you know, think of the analogy of the shape. So yeah, where attention goes, energy flows. What you focus on grows. So we have to bring our awareness back to our body with daily practices like mindful movement, like breathing. Breath work is just so powerful, but so is mindful movement. I'm going to show you what I mean in a moment. And I'm going to put a link to a YouTube video that I did today called The Rechargeable Breath, which is amazing. So when we do this, when we move mindfully, when we kind of gyrate our hips, when we touch our bodies, when we really like get all yummy on ourselves, this allows our pleasure centers to come alive. It also brings us back to us. It brings our awareness back into our bodies. And this is about the senses. Pleasure is about the senses, and the senses can only really come alive when you stop freaking planning. Okay, So planning and pleasure are polar opposites. They are the opposite ends of the spectrum. Okay. So this is about getting sensory. And you can start by creating an environment where you live that is more sensory. You can get involved with different colored light bulbs. You can get involved with different textures and fabrics around your home space. You can get involved with incense or aromatherapy or deep, rich colors, sensual flavors, crystals, flowers, plants, statues, whatever you like, filling your environment with sensory pleasures so that your senses actually get stimulated on a daily basis. How often, when you sit down to eat, do you not really engage with the sense of taste? So this is such a powerful one. So at the weekend, what we had to do, the women had to dress up in something sexy, the men were blindfolded, and we had to give them a sort of sensory experience. So we started with sounds. They couldn't obviously see. We started with sounds. Then we went to smells, lots of different smells. And your senses come alive when you're blindfolded. Then we did touch with lots of different, fabrics and temperatures. It was amazing. The men were just like orgasmic. It was incredible. And we were literally doing very, very little to them. But it made you feel, as a woman, it made you feel quite powerful. And then at the end, they took their blindfolds off. And we were there with our sexy outfit on, and we gave them a little lap dance. So yeah, it was a really nice thing to do, actually. And you could try that with your partner. I mean, it scared a lot of us at first because, again, it's not something that you are used to. It's not something that we really do in our daily lives, is get sensory and get sensual. But I do believe that it's something that we really need to start prioritizing if we're going to enjoy pleasure and if we're going to get this burst of nitric oxide that we love and that we need. So then there's movement, and movement can be so pleasurable as well. It really gets you tuned into your body. So this is about, standing there. Shall I stand up? Shall I do this? Am I going to do this? It looks like I am. So you can see I've got my got my leggings on, but never mind. Can you actually see my head there? I don't think you can, so I'm going to come back down. So basically, what you can do when you're moving is you can put some beautiful Tantra music on, but you just start to gyrate your hips and you start to just gently stroke and caress your body. You can touch your boobs, you can touch your arms, you can go wherever you want to go. It's your body. Touch whatever part you want. There's no holes barred, literally. So, and when you're feeling into yourself, try to bring your awareness not to your hand, but to the part of your body that your hand is touching. It's quite difficult to do because there's more nerve endings in the palms of the hands. So I'm going to come back so you can see me. So when you're touching, just really tune in with the part of the body that you're touching. It's such a delicious experience if you allow yourself the time and the space to get into this. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I can't do this, don't worry about it. It's quite challenging if you've not been on like a hippie tantric workshop. But you can try it. Give it a go. Why not? See what resistances come up. See what you feel. Create the space for you to do this. Definitely add music, add low-level lighting, and just take yourself on a pleasure journey, And at first you might be thinking, I'm not really feeling very much, like, what's going on here? But again, you've got to give yourself the space to dive deep into this because it's actually very subtle. It's not obvious. It's not a big kind of hit of dopamine that we get when we eat a Mars bar or something. It's subtle, and we need to train ourselves actually to become more subtly aware of our senses. So going for the micro rather than the macro. So yeah, this movement reminded me of a scene in Friends. I don't know if I guess you all know about Friends, the TV series, where Rachel is teaching Monica how to get the guy, and she basically says to Monica, you have to act like everything around you turns you on. I think she was playing with a tea towel at the time, or chopping some carrots, I think. So it's a really cool scene. Maybe it's on YouTube if you want to go and have a look. And this practice of Tantra sort of reminded me of that. And I've been practicing it today, like making my tea, like, ooh, this kettle's really turning me on. Trying not to like sort of be too much in my head with it, actually trying to embody the feeling of sensuality. I don't mean sexuality. Sensuality is your senses, is to do with your senses. Okay, so how else can we get out of our head and into our body? We can slow down a bit, right? This is such a powerful message. Slow the fuck down, ladies. Just slow down. Stop rushing from A to B, because your body communicates on a much slower time system than your mind. And culture, the patriarchy, if you want to call it that, has led us to believe that we need speed. Speed is better, straight as an arrow, time focused, goal orientated success. But as many of you know, that doesn't work. And I see many male clients that come to me who are at the end of their tether. The patriarchy doesn't work for men either, let's face it. So slowing down, taking time for the small pleasures. So here's a book by the School of Life called Small Pleasures. And I love it. And some of the things that they suggest tuning into as small pleasures, I will read you some of the titles. They've written full chapters on these titles. The Fish Shop, Stars, Grandmothers, The Friend Who Listens, Take Off, A Night Alone in a Hotel, Sunbathing, the Desert, Finding Your Feet Abroad, Being Up Late at Night, The Charm of Cows, Up at Dawn, Just Staring Out of a Window, A Hot Bath, Indulgent Pessimism, I love that one, Self-Pity is a small pleasure. That's quite nice, actually, if you think about, indulging in self-pity as a small pleasure just for a small amount of time. I mean, I don't advocate negativity at all, but I think if you can use it as a pleasure, if you can reframe it as a kind of small pleasure that you allow yourself, just a tiny amount of time in a day, if you feel it arising. How wonderful is that? And there's loads. I'm not going to read all of the chapters, but there's loads. Very dark jokes, getting over a row, cypress trees. There are so many small pleasures that when you actually sit and think about it, you realise, how much we miss in our daily lives. All right, tip number 2. Let me just have a quick drink. Let me just see who else is watching. I just want to have a quick look and see if anyone else is watching. Bear with me. Am I live in the group? There I am. Yeah, there's a couple of people watching, so that's really awesome. I can't see who, but it doesn't matter. All right, so tip number 2, stay with your feelings. Always. Even the difficult ones. Hi, TJ, thank you. Stay with your feelings always, even the difficult ones, and breathe into them. Okay. So as you start to feel into yourself and become more open and more sensory orientated, shit's gonna go down, ladies. I'm telling you. Stuff that you've not dealt with, old childhood programs and old patterns from childhood might come up. This is because when we link in with the feelings, the brain-body connection is wide open. Stuff can come out that's been suppressed for years and years and years by things like stress, by things like sugar, by things like alcohol, by things like just numbing, because we can choose to numb. You know, we can do all of these things as an avoidance tactic to feeling. Even body weight can act as a sort of subconscious layer of protection against feeling. And we pad out to avoid feeling feelings. Now, again, it's not your fault. This is what culture has taught us to do, that feelings are bad and goals are good. So when you start to break this down and start to decide that there's got to be a better way for you, when you start to take responsibility for yourself and for feeling your feelings and going there and doing the work and doing the healing, some nasty stuff can come up, but it's worth going there, because when you get to the other side, it's phenomenally reviving and awakening, and just like, wow, you see things so clearly. Now, on the Tantra weekend that Graham and I have just done, we had this experience. So after that dance that I told you about, that sensory experience, the idea with that is that you go upstairs and you make love and you have sex and you have a good time, right? So we go upstairs with that in mind, but I am exhausted. And I'm exhausted because I felt like I was putting on a show. I felt like I was performing. Now, those of you that know me know I'm a singer as well, and I'm also in a little band called Blaker and the Bombshells. And, you know, any kind of things that I'm doing where I'm in front of other people, I can feel like I am performing, and it's not authentic and it's exhausting sometimes. So it was a massive wake-up call for me to realize that I was performing, and that actually in a lot of areas of my life, I still feel like I have to perform, and it can be draining sometimes. So I gently drifted off. I managed to drift off, so we didn't have sex, and I gently drifted off to sleep. He was holding me, we were cuddling, we were doing, you know, a nice practice. I drifted off to sleep. He couldn't sleep because he'd eaten a bar of chocolate. He was wide awake. He was looking at his iPad, and he was involved in a raffle draw thing. He was to win a metal detector, and he actually won this metal detector, which was amazing for him. But he got so excited, he decided to wake me up and tell me that he'd won this metal detector, and it sent a shot of adrenaline through my body, and then I couldn't get back to sleep again. So I had this rage just came over me, and I was like, ah, big rage. And we ended up in a kind of drama between us, acting out and playing out a kind of childhood dynamic in this tantric den that we were sleeping in, that was supposed to be beautiful, it was supposed to be romantic, it was supposed to induce connection, but it was just like so much pain was coming out of both of us that, yeah, it was just awful. And we really both felt like running away. We felt like packing our suitcases and running away. But there was something inside of me that knew that this experience had come up for a reason, and that if we could just stay and work through it, you know, the next day, then we would be fine. We would get the teaching, we would get the lesson. It wouldn't just be about us having a shit experience and it was his fault. or my fault or whatever, we would get the lesson. And we did get the lesson. You know, guys, this was yesterday morning. I'm telling you about this. So I'm still a bit raw. I still quite haven't processed everything, but I wanted to mention it to you because I wanted to really underpin this point that when you start to open yourself up, you are going to get the shit. You're going to get the old childhood programming that's going to come up and it's going to rear its ugly head so that you can look at it, you can feel it in all its entirety, and then you can let it go. Because feelings that no longer need to be felt just disappear. And the trouble is, we think that we are going to stay in those feelings forever, but we don't. They pass through us like a gust of wind, like a Hurricane Kiara that we've had here, and eventually they do go, they do diminish, and the two of you get the lesson, you get the learning, or it doesn't really matter if it's both of you, because really it's just about you. You need to get the learning. It's always, always, always coming back to self. You know, you're the one that's got to get the learning. And what happens is, because feeling is healing and feeling can be quite painful, you get these resistances. And this is what some of my RTT clients experience. So RTT in itself, rapid transformational therapy, the therapy that I do is a journey in itself. And it's a journey because journeys are powerful. It's a journey under hypnosis. When you're in hypnosis, the gate between the mind and the body is wide open. So those physical sensations come up and they come up and you get to feel them. But some people block them. And they block them because they think they're going to get stuck in those feelings forever. But of course, they're not. You don't. Feelings are ephemeral, like that nitric oxide. They kind of, they come, they go, they come out, you let them go. You don't stay in them forever when you're in a therapeutic setting. Some more intense emotions like grief, you can end up staying in them for quite a period of time, but then they dissipate and then they come in again like a wave. But you've got to embrace that wave. That is the healing process. So some of my clients, once they do open up that door in RTT, sometimes they do actually feel worse, right? And this is where another session is required. But, you know, those sorts of people are the people that have not done any work on themselves and maybe they're older. So this is your cue. Just start now. Do the work now, whatever age you are at. Do the internal clearing. Do the physical stuff. Do the pleasure stuff. Allow it. See what comes up. And just let it be your guide, really. Yeah, you don't want to bury your emotions for too long. Blocks to feeling pleasure. Some of my clients, you know, they deny themselves pleasure because subconsciously they know that if they start to feel, they're going to bring stuff up. Others believe that they don't deserve to feel pleasure, which is really, really sad, because you do deserve, everyone deserves to feel pleasure, especially women, because if we didn't, we wouldn't have been born with a clitoris, which its only function in your body is pleasure. There is no other function for the clitoris. It's an organ that is designed for you so that you can feel pleasure. You are meant to feel pleasure. You know, the body has got everything that it needs to heal and to regenerate. In truth, we don't really need anything else. But sometimes we just need a little bit of a shunt in the right direction. So other people block pleasure because they've got a belief that says no pain, no gain. And of course, you know, that's the patriarchal culture that we live in. And, you know, some pain is good. A little bit of pain can be transformational. You know, exercise is quite painful, but you focus on it, you move through it. But we need a balance. It can't just be all growth, all linear, all goal orientated. It's got to be a bit of that and a bit of pleasure, a bit of fluidity, a bit of oozing, a bit of sensuality, and all that lovely stuff as well. So rapid transformational therapy is a wonderful therapy to help you remove your blocks to pleasure. And if you are interested in having a session with me, just let me know and I can tell you more about it. Okay, on to my final tip. Okay, and breathe. So when it comes to pleasure, stop being goal orientated. Okay, so goals are great when it comes to business, when it comes to finances, but when it comes to pleasure, goals tend to switch the thinking mind on and tend to switch the pleasure centers off. Okay, so pleasure is all about being in the now. Pleasure is all about the senses, tuning in to the now. You can't experience your senses unless you are in the now. Sensual experience, whatever it may be, is not in the past, it's not in the future, it's in the now. So it's all about learning to be in the now. So how do we become more now orientated? Where possible, remove some goals, especially when it comes to your pleasure. So you can schedule your pleasure times in. You can say, right, from 4 until 7 on a Friday afternoon, I'm devoting to pleasure. You can do that, but in that time, don't have any goals. Don't say, I'm going to walk 2 miles, that's going to be my pleasure. Think of it as just loose, fluid, a sensory experience that is very much in the now. Give yourself some of that me time. So I would like to talk about sex for a moment, because sex is a big old part of pleasure, isn't it? And I want to weave in something that I learned over the weekend. So sex is generally goal orientated because it's about reaching orgasm. Got to reach that orgasm. But often orgasm is a joy that we can't fathom that we could experience if we're stressed, if we're down here. Orgasm's up here, stress is here. How are we going to get from there to there? It just seems like too far away. So when the mind is switched off, we can allow the pleasure to come up, to be birthed out. And I don't know if any of you have had this experience of being woken up in the middle of the night by your own Kundalini energy. What I mean by that is you're half asleep and you get woken up by your own horniness, right? You're like, fuck, where's that come from? And what happens is, because the mind is kind of deactivated and your mind is switched off, your pleasure centers suddenly wake up because they're not being suppressed anymore by stress or anxiety or numbing. So that is why that can happen sometimes. I think that is just so interesting. When that happens, I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? But it's because the mind is switched off. So, as I said before, pleasure is not about being goal orientated, whereas sex usually is. And there's something that we did over the weekend called carezza, which means cuddle in Italian. And it's an ancient practice that is designed to ignite intimacy and connection with your partner and build pleasure and desire very, very slowly. So slowly, it's almost frustrating. And this takes the performance out of it, performance anxiety out of sex. So we did quite a few exercises around carezza, but one of the exercises, and you can do this in the morning or in the evening, is you basically put your man's penis inside of you whilst it is soft. So there's no pumping action. So it's meant to be a beautiful practice of deeply connecting with your partner, having him inside of you Or if you're in a girl-girl relationship, you can do boobs, because these are like poles as well. By poles, I mean north and south, positive, negative, your boobs are positive poles. Find a way of just taking your partner into you, and then that's it. So there's no pumping, and you just stay. You stay with that for 10 minutes. You breathe together, and you slow everything down. So there's no goal. There's really nothing to do apart from just stay in this very, very still place. And you might find that things come up for you. You might find your mind is racing. You might find that sadness comes up for you. You might find that frustration comes up for you. You might find that pleasure, ecstasy, amazingness comes up for you. But it's a way of just staying still, being in that moment without being goal orientated. And the exercise is called plugging in. And like I said, it really deepens the connection that you have with your partner. It's really amazing, actually. So I wanted to share my screen and show you something. That's the screen share one, isn't it? There we are. Okay, so this is a link to Huffington Post. Quite explicit photos there, sorry. And this is how the sex technique Carezza could revive your stale relationship. So let's have a look at some of the titles. It reduces sex-related performance anxiety. It brings you into the present moment. It makes sex last longer. It leaves you feeling closer to your partner. Definitely does that. What else? Start gradually, build up from there. Communicate with your partner before, during, and after the experience, and find little ways to bond physically and emotionally. So yeah, I'll share that article with you so that you can have a little read if it's something that you want to try with your partner as well. And I definitely recommend that you try things. Because if you've always done what you always do, if you've always let's get this wrong. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, basically. So you have to change things. You have to do something different. And the reason I wanted to go on this Tantra weekend was because I knew there were some blocks between Graham and I, and I knew that, before the wedding ceremony, I wanted to clear them. And I really wanted to learn more about embodiment, about the practice and the art of pleasure. Because it's not just about what you know, it's not just about what you think, it's about how your body feels. And there are so many practices that we can do, including yoga, mindful breathing, the touching, the Carezza practice, to help take us out of our heads and into our bodies. So I really hope you've enjoyed that. That's been another long one. Let me know what you've got out of it. Let me know what you might try. Let me know if you've tried any of these things before. And yeah, let's just keep talking about pleasure. So, as some of you know, at the moment I am busy creating a kind of roadmap for you so that you can have an incredible menopausal transition. But I need a little bit of help before I launch this, because I want to make sure that I'm getting everything right for you guys. I need to kind of dot all the I's and cross all of the T's. So I'm looking for a handful of people just to have a quick 20-minute research call with. I will put the link up there so you can book in for that call if you have something to share with me, if you want to let me know what your menopausal experience has been like, and also let me know what you think you would find useful in a kind of online course program for yourself. Okay, ladies, thank you so much for spending this hour with me. I've really enjoyed talking about this subject. It's such a fascinating subject. Let me know what you try. Let me know your thoughts on the subject. And of course, I will see you next week.